Can I have your attention? All right. Hey, I did get everybody's attention. That's pretty cool. Usually I do not. We have a lot of people here from the city that's going to talk about all the new parking regulations. So that's primarily all we're going to be doing today. This meeting is taking the place of our normal Downtown Business Council meeting, which is always the fourth Thursday of the month. So this month we will not have one. This is it. You got it. So the important things, Sheila is passing out the schedule of upcoming events. So please look at those events. We have a lot coming up. We have Memorial Day. Then we have all the camp weekends. So please make sure that your restaurants and your stores are prepared. I do want to remind everybody that the start of the summer is coming up right after Memorial Day. I encourage you to extend your hours. So if you're a restaurant, actually the restaurants probably have extended hours already. But if you're a retail store, it's time to not close at 5 o'clock any longer. It's time to probably close at 7 o'clock. It's really your choice, but I know our store will be staying open to 8 o'clock all summer. We do it every summer. I know some of the stores are already staying open till 7 or 8. So please try to extend your hours for our summer visitors. And other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Lynne.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and talk about parking.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to move over here out of the glare of the light. I think most of you know who I am, but if you don't, my name is Lynne Harakal. I'm the Executive Director of Swiss Fair. The current parking committee for the city resides under Swiss Fair, and so I have the fortunate duty to present this to everybody here this afternoon. But I do want to introduce the people who are going to be sitting up front, because I'm going to be doing the presentation, but I will not be the person who will be answering all the questions after the fact. There's different people with different expertise in different areas that will be able to address some of your questions that I might not be able to. So we have Sergeant Zerby on the far end, Captain Jones, Chief Summers, obviously me, Sabrina Bengal, our Alderman, Ward 1, Billy Falconberry, who is the chair of the parking committee for Swiss Fair, and Danny Batten, who is also a Swiss Fair board member. Obviously, he's the person who is the head of the Downtown Business Council, but he is also the only person, I think, in this room right now who also resided on the parking committee for the city of New Bern, which was a committee that was formed in the fall of the year. And then once the recommendations from that committee were adopted by the city in terms of new ordinances, that's when the parking committee then fell under Swiss Fair from that point forward. So we're working on a number of different things. One of the things that we worked on was the rollout of what parking enforcement in downtown is actually going to be looking like, which is what we're going over today. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about before we get started is, I know that everybody's going to have different opinions as to parking enforcement in the downtown area. We know that people have differing opinions, but studies are very, very clear that one of the factors for downtown businesses to increase sales is to have parking space turnover. It is very, very clear. The more turnover of parking that there is in front of a building, the more potential for sales. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has done a lot of studies on this, and they've come up with a range of what the value of a parking space is in a downtown area. Obviously, it's going to depend on the size of the municipality and where it's located, but the range is between $17,000 and $35,000. So what per year? So what that means is if you have 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars that are parked in front of your business for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours straight, that's money out of your pocket because there's no turnover of parking spaces in front of your business. So one of the things that we're trying to accomplish in all this is to get that turnover of parking. We want downtown to have as much business for the existing businesses as possible, and we want to draw more businesses into the downtown area and continue that growth forward. So right now, since it's difficult to find parking on the street, I guess the question that everybody's had to ask over time is, do we have a parking capacity problem? And we believe that the answer right now is no. We really don't have a parking capacity problem, but we have to find a way to create availability for that parking. So the way that that is going to be done is by having different types of parking in different areas. And we had conversations with different communities, different municipalities across the state to find out what they were doing within their communities that were similarly sized to ours. And decisions that were made based upon best practices in these different communities across the state. We brought local stakeholders together. We brought city representatives to the table, and together decisions were worked out, both in terms of the city parking group and the Swiss Bear parking group. So the very first step in this process is going to be enforcement. And so we'll be taking a look at that in a minute. That's going to be based on two types of parking availability. One is, they're both free parking. One is 2-hour free parking, which is on the streets in downtown. We'll go over exactly which blocks that's going to be looking at. And the other is free all-day parking. And that's going to be in 3 lots located around the perimeter and also on Broad Street. So the second step in this process will happen once the enforcement is in place, which is assessment of how this is working and the implementation of this. There's bound to be hiccups. There's always hiccups when a new set of processes and procedures are in place. But that information needs to be put forward to Swiss Bear, your aldermen, the police where necessary, and we will continue to look at that information and try to figure out the best way to deal with some of the problems that we may not foresee right now, but may happen in the future. So one of the things I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about, I kind of crunched some numbers today. Before I crunch those numbers though, and you're free to take a look at this. This is a map that was put together by Public Works, and you can't really see anything here, but I will have it up front for you to take a look at it if you're interested. Public Works went out and they counted the parking spaces that are in downtown New Bern. Now they counted public spaces and they counted privately owned spaces. All of the parking spaces in downtown New Bern come to 3,100 and change parking spaces. We've got a lot of parking spaces in downtown New Bern. A lot of them are privately owned, but we have a lot of private spaces. We're looking at ways to perhaps have partnerships with some of the owners of these privately owned spaces. That's something that, if it happens, it will be happening down the road. But you can take a look at this. You can see where those parking spaces are located, and they're color-coded on the map. Now, in terms of what is currently available, that will be currently available to the public at the point of enforcement beginning, we have a total of 575 public spaces that people will be able to park in. Of those 575 public spaces, 337 of those will be 2-hour parking spaces on the street. And then the remaining balance of those will be 238 free all day long parking spaces if somebody wants to be in downtown New Bern for a longer period than a 2-hour period of time. And that is the 3 lots and the parking that's on Broad Street in the 200, 300, and 400 blocks of Broad Street. There is also additional parking that it would be potentially available to people on the opposite side of Broad Street. I didn't bother going past the 400 block of Hancock, Middle, or Craven, but there is an additional additional 43 spaces on those blocks as well. So there should be ample parking for the time being in the downtown area. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to start looking at some of the information that you need to know as we're moving forward. So we have 3 free public parking lots. This came out of, and you're probably already familiar with this, out of the city's committee that met in 2017 in the fall of the year. And they looked at the 3 parking lots that will be all-day free public parking, which are currently free all-day public parking. It's just that the signage doesn't get people to those lots at the moment. So there is new signage that's going to be put into place. The one lot is, the first lot that you're looking at here is called the Gold Bear lot, and that's the farmer's market. And we've got 48 parking spaces in that lot. Maria Cho, who I think is here, I think I saw Maria come in. She walked around town over the weekend and she measured in steps, we converted it into time, how long it was going to take to get from that lot to Middle and Broad Street, to Bear Plaza and City Hall. And you can see it's a range. You know, people walk at different speeds, so that's kind of the basic range for how long it would take most people to walk those distances. And all that information actually, I'm sorry, is not in your handout. We had to get this handout to the printer beforehand. So if you're interested in this additional information, you will get it as a PDF that will be emailed to you once, probably tomorrow morning. We'll get that emailed out to you. All right, so then the next sign is showing basically what the signage looks like. Ignore the fact that it says Yellow Bear. When the sign was put together, it was called Yellow Bear, but the city's colors are black, red, and gold. So the final sign that will be put into place will be the Gold Bear public lot. But the rest of the information that you see there is stylistically the way that the sign's actually going to be looking. So the next lot is the Black Bear lot, which is the New and Hancock Street lot, across the street from First Presbyterian Church. I did mention this before, even though we do have all-day parking, there's not to be any overnight parking. There probably won't be ticketing unless somebody is a repeat offender in terms of the overnight parking, but that lot does have 60 parking spaces. And when you're working on the count from there, the fastest count is actually cutting across the back of the Centenary lot. We'll probably look at a way of creating a more distinct city pathway that cuts across there. And it is a little bit faster to all the different points that we had mentioned before that are listed here. So the next and last lot is the Red Bear lot, which is just right down the street here, 200 block of Craven Street. And again, all the same information that was provided on the other screens is available on this one as well. So move on. Okay, so 2-hour parking is going to be on the streets on the blocks of the streets that you see here. So 1, 2, and 300 blocks of Craven, that takes you basically from the river up to Broad. Same applies for Middle Street. Hancock Street is just the 2 and 300 blocks of Hancock Street. Hancock Street, the ordinance reads that it's going to be on the east side of the 2 and 300 block and on the west side only of the 300 block. And then from Pollock Street, it takes you from the Neuse River down to Hancock Street, and South Front Street takes you from East Front Street over to Hancock Street in terms of what will be monitored for 2-hour parking in downtown. So on this screen, you can just kind of see directionally where the streets are, and the arrows showing what direction parking will be enforced and on what blocks. And again, that parking will be enforced just Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. Okay. And again, the directional arrows are showing you the same information. And now you can see what the overall grid looks like on this particular screen. All right, so there is leased parking in downtown. In terms of the city leased spaces only, parking spaces that are currently leased through the city will be a part of the parking enforcement that is taking place. If you are currently leasing a spot from the city of New Bern, each one of your spots will receive 2 hangers that you can place on, that will need to be placed on the rear view mirror of your vehicle. You're going to receive 2 so that if you have more than one car, you can have one in each vehicle. The name of your business, or whoever it is that's leasing it, whatever that name might be, will be on that tag that is to be hung inside the car. The only way that our parking enforcers will know that that a car that is parked in a particular leased space belongs to the person or the business that has leased the space is to have that hanger in place. If that hanger is not in place, that person will be ticketed. Okay. So parking enforcement, here's the big information. It begins July 9th. So that is a Monday, the Monday after the 4th of July. There is not a grace period of time. Everybody's being told about this up front. But what will happen is that the very first time a vehicle is ticketed, that is issued as a warning ticket. So the very first time a vehicle is ticketed, it is a warning. After that first initial warning, if you are parking illegally, you will receive a ticket, and that ticket is fined at $25. If it's not paid within 30 days, that fine will increase to $50. There are going to be 3 to 4 part-time parking enforcers that will be going around downtown monitoring the leased spaces and the 2-hour parking areas of downtown. And those enforcers will receive training both from the New Bern Police Department and also from the Visitor and Convention Center, so that if people have a question as to where to go for a particular item that they're interested in, or a particular type of food, or need some sort of directions to the Firemen's Museum or to the History Center, they will be prepared to answer those questions, and they will also be carrying around with them the visitor's guide, so that if anybody is interested in receiving the visitor's guide, they'll have them there to hand out. The visitor's guide will also have a map of downtown as the centerfold, locating where all of the different parking lots are located. Okay, so the amount of time that a car is going to be monitored, how they're going to be monitoring that, is by something that is called electronic chalk. There's no visible chalk mark, so don't think that if your tire doesn't have a chalk mark on it that it hasn't been marked. It will have been marked. It's electronically marked, and I'm going to let the police explain exactly how that works once we're finished here. So they'll electronically mark that, and there's a 2-hour parking period, and if that car has not been moved in a 2-hour parking period, they'll either receive a warning or a ticket. And they will know if you moved it forward a space or 2 spaces. So you'll still get ticketed if you do that. So don't play the parking game, all right? Just park where you can park all day long if you're an employee.
What about visitors if they go from one block to another block because they're just strolling around the downtown area? So if they moved the whole block, would they still get a ticket? Or can ask that question.
Yeah, well, and there's been conversations about that. I'll let them address that at the end. If we can just wait until the end for answering the questions, that would be great. So where can employees park, and where can you park if you're the owner of a business? So an inventory of parking spaces for lease is actually being assembled now. It's not completed, but as soon as it is, it will be emailed out to everybody so that you can see what those options are. And that may take a little bit of time to get that completed. But in the meantime, employees can park in one of the 3 all-day-long parking spots that are available. And they do really kind of cover the major corners of downtown. So for most employees, that will be fine. For people who are working evening shifts, again, parking enforcement ends at 4 o'clock. So for hopefully a lot of those people, they won't have the same issues if there's concerns about walking a little bit of a distance to lots after restaurants and bars close down. So the City of New Bern is creating a parking page, and that will probably be in place
the next couple of weeks.
The second half of June. Let's figure that will be in place. Be encouraging different organizations like Swiss Bear, the Chamber, Visit New Bern, to have a link over to the city's website so that that information can be easily shared. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. I may be able to answer some of them. Others here up front will be able to answer some of your questions as well. If you have a question after this meeting is over with, or if you have a concern, or if you, once enforcement starts and you see that there's an issue, you can send that information, your information to me at this email address, and that's in the handout that you have there. And you get emails from us on a fairly regular basis, so I think most of you know how to reach me. And again, Sabrina will also be available, and others as well. So I'm sure there are questions, and Mary, we already know what your question is, so I'll let.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Wow, what a group. We're embarking on something new for us. I'm sure you had parking enforcement in the past, but the way we're implementing it this time, it'll be a little bit different, so it'll be something new. So first I want to ask your patience. As you heard, there's probably over 300 spaces that the parking enforcement officers will have to monitor. And we're trying this new electronic chalking device, which is going to take a little learning curve, but I think you're going to find that it's going to work real well. As far as answering your question about parking in a block, the way the code reads, and I want to remind everybody, the way we try to enforce the law in the city of New Bern is go by what the law says, not what we think the law says. So we kind of look at the letter of the law, and I always encourage Ms. Bingo and any member of the board or the mayor, if the law is not fitting what the city intends, to change it, and they've been very responsive to doing that. But so we don't get in the middle of things and treat someone different from someone else. We have to go by what the law says. So the law requires that you cannot stay in a block for longer than a 2-hour period. Now, if they move to another block, they'll be fined.
Not fined, but fine.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make sure.
They'll be okay.
Okay. Make sure we work this out.
Okay. Yeah, I should have used that word.
I know.
And I'll have Sergeant. I just want to introduce who I have with me. I have Sergeant Zerby and Captain Jones. Captain Jones is in charge of the service division, so he's basically in charge of. He'll be in charge overall, in charge of that division, and which Sergeant Zerby falls under him. And under Sergeant Zerby will be the parking attendants, or the parking enforcers. So Sergeant Zerby has already been briefed on how this is going to work, and he has a good understanding of that device. So you want to just share briefly what that device is like?
Talk about that they use it in Greenville too.
Right. This is a device that's been getting used in Greenville for several years now. So I got to make a trip up there, actually play with it, touch it, feel it, see what it does. And so essentially this is what the parking enforcer is going to do. He'll come up to a car, he'll be able to take a picture of the tag and the picture of the car in that particular parking space. From there, he'll leave to the next car and continue to do so. After the 2-hour mark, that instrument will alert him that 2 hours is up for that vehicle, and he can either go right back to it, or he can actually map himself back to it. It has everything built in, and basically, if you were to look at it, it's going to look like a cell phone with a printer on top of it. It's a very simple piece of equipment. So he routes back to it. If the car's still there, then he will be able to just click a button to be able to issue a citation or a fine, and prints off, goes right on the windshield wiper, and he's off to the next vehicle. If the car's not there, he has a simple button he just clicks that the car's moved, it clears it from his list, and then again he moves on to the next vehicle. It's a relatively very simple process for him.
And as far as any appeal process, we found in Greenville that it's pretty simple also. You have the picture of the vehicle. It's been there. We can show when it was there at that time and when it was there when it was given the ticket. So really not much of an argument over did you violate the ordinance or not.
How will this be marked? So if you're out of town, if you're on a wedding or whatever, you're coming for the week, and I come in and I eat breakfast at Sabrina's place, and then I stroll up Middle Street, then I stroll over to Pollard Street and I shop like most women do. My wife doesn't shop in 2 hours. So my question is, how is the average person going to know that they're only supposed to park from one spot for 2 hours? Most people will have a meter that they feed and go, hey, we know we got 2 hours.
Yep.
So now all of a sudden I got to move my car to another block.
Yeah.
I think
There should be signs, and
look
one
right
right
over
behind
Turn
you.
behind you, that beautiful sign is going to be all over downtown.
Yeah,
Yes.
that looks great with all the other stuff we have. No, one more other question is, y'all come in from Rotary, so most of my guys that come in from Rotary get there about 12 o'clock to set up. So in the middle of Rotary, they're gonna have to leave and go home to their car. So I guess we're prepared for what I'm worried about. Most of us have employees, and all our employees are parking in the wrong spot. So should we have done this first before penalizing those people that are
That's
gonna come into town to spend money? And we're probably gonna be in a situation where we're gonna piss off a lot of people.
We did
Especially Newburgh is made up of
Yeah.
a lot of retirees that like to park at the front door.
We did try that. You know, we tried to encourage our employees to park in the,
Well, maybe we
Oh,
should
lots.
penalize them and give them the tickets.
but how do you distinguish between, that is, you know, we're just trying to be
Well, we
fair.
as
and-
employers should probably educate our people.
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern, is that what we're getting ready to do is open a can of worms. Maybe ticking our customers off in this big push of what we're doing.
You know, we're going to have to think out,
Yeah.
these are all great questions. We're going to have to think outside the box.
Well, we've been here before, we've done this before, and we had a lot of people that we ticked off. And so, I'm up for whatever, but
Chris, if I could just say, like, when I did the timing of the black parking lot to your restaurant, it was 2 minutes. I mean, 220 steps.
yeah,
to
all my
walk.
staffs are supposed to park over there in front of First Press, so I have no problem with that. They can get as many tickets as they want. So I'm okay with that. What I'm worried about is those people that linger longer than 2 hours that are spending our money in our properties. Who's going to stop coming down?
You're lucky, Chris, and they can park on Broad Street because there's no time limit on Broad Street.
Well, I'm not on
And
Broad
plus-
Street.
No, and I agree. That's what I'm saying. He has that luxury.
Just for sake, we've done this before, like you say, the happiest day of our lives is when we removed it all. What I'm saying is, I know you're gonna do it, the money's been spent, and it's gonna happen. I'm just sitting here thinking, what if everybody's sales goes down 10, 15%? When will you readdress this and say, either this is great, or we've made a mistake? That's all I'm saying, because I remember how my business went straight up after the parking was removed, when I used to drive around in little white eggs with the chalk. And I know this chalk is better than that chalk. But I know, like Chris, I have 2 or 3 clubs that meet at lunchtime twice a month, and there's 30 or 40 of them. There's no way. I think what they'll probably do is go somewhere else outside downtown, and that's 30 or 40 people. But what I'm asking is there going to be a readdress? Have you all thought about that, just in case? I'm hoping that, well, I'm wrong. I'm hoping. I'm praying, especially with the summer coming.
Can I,
We are
Can
going
I,
to
I
have,
just, can I, just- is there gonna be, let me just, is there gonna be like a time limit, 6
Yes.
months, 12 months,
Yes.
18
Yes.
months?
over and over and over, everything about this is gonna have to be looked at. From the time we started talking about this, kind of think in the context of ripples. Or if you do this, this is gonna happen, and if that happens, that's gonna happen. None of this has been, this crowd that comes at lunch, they're there longer than 2 hours.
You're missing my point. It's not just, it's them, yeah.
No, I don't think I am. It's gonna be
No.
everything's gonna be reassessed, every aspect of it.
How much space and time? That's all I'm just trying to get an idea.
We did talk about that.
I mean, it's my fault for not going to the meeting.
Well, as Lynn said at the beginning, this is new to all of us.
Right.
We're trying it. We know it's going to have issues we haven't thought about, so we've said in 30 days, we're going to reassess it, take a look at 60, at 90, and try and bring in any kind of criticism, comments we have. We may not please everybody with the results of that, but we're going to try and resolve any kind of issues we got as best we can.
The only issues we had were sales.
Well, there's a lot more than sales, honestly, because
well-
I understand you're looking from your perspective, I look from my perspective.
Right.
You know, I lease a space from the city that I've had to try and self-enforce for the last 4 years, and not to step on toes, but there's a restaurant here in town that gets more use out of it than I do. You know, so
And to be,
we've all got our
fair,
issues.
Tom, to be fair, your 30 people that might stay there longer than 2 hours, that you're impacting the sales of your neighbor next door who might have a small shop that nobody can get to
What I'm
because
saying
it
is,
doesn't turn
if they
over.
leave-
We're trying to be fair.
No, that's fine, I'm just saying they'll probably go, that's okay. All right?
We're gonna go anywhere.
Okay. Well, she wanna- But I'm just saying, a broader spectrum, I'm more worried about all the other customers, the other 95%, that's all.
So Tom, we talked about, at the last meeting, we talked about passing a questionnaire out right after Labor Day, so we can evaluate to all the businesses, so we can ask, do you think it's working? There's a lot of variables, but a good variable to see if this is working, are your sales going down? And I'm a business owner, I sit on that committee, and trust me, if I feel like sales are going down across the board for downtown, I'm gonna be the first one to vocalize this thing, we're throwing it out the window.
But I ask you to keep in mind that most other communities have some kind of enforced parking. They all have businesses that are vital, so it's bigger, it's a big question. We don't want to penalize businesses, we don't want sales down, but we also, I've been on parking committee since 1991. Every one of them identified the biggest problem we have is not how many spaces, it's how they're allocated and misuse of them. You can't fix that unless you enforce it.
Well,
So
we're gonna find out.
we're going to try it. It may not work.
And maybe one thing that's going to be a little different than the last time is I do feel like we're going to have really, really good signage directing our visitors to these outlying parking lots.
That's key.
That if you looked at the times, the longest one was 8.5 minutes to get to the other side of town. And so it's not a long walk. And so if you come across, if you're a visitor and you come across that bridge, you're really going to be directed to a lot of parking spaces besides the ones that are right on Middle Street, Craven Street.
And if you're coming down Broad Street, you will be directed as well.
Yes, yeah, you would.
All
But we
directions.
don't think visitors are as much the problem as the locals, because put yourself in the tourist hat. When you go to another community, you expect to park somewhere and walk for a while. So we really feel like it's more of a local issue.
I think perhaps also it's going to require for the business owners to train their employees, particularly the ones that are near the front door. Perhaps when the customer comes in, say, did you find a good parking lot? Or how much longer, or a lot of things that you'd think of. But if your employees know that and make that as part of the welcoming conversation with the people who come, I think you'll solve 50% of those problems, and somebody might say, oh, well, I better go move my car, or something like that. So it will require training employees.
So all this is Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. My busiest time, and most people's busiest time is not Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. It's Saturday, it's Sunday, it's holidays. We wouldn't have parking enforcement on holidays, holiday Mondays, holiday Fridays.
No.
Okay. I'm not been doing this as long as everybody, but my busiest time is Friday night through Saturday through Sunday. And the people who are on the street Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, many of them are not out spending money. So.
Well, it all depends. They like to eat, they are.
Absolutely, but the people who are on the street for 8 hours at a time, which I've been guilty of myself, 100%. If I'm not parked in front of my business, somebody else might be for 8 hours. So I think that I'm glad I was asking. I did want to ask that question, if holidays or not. Holidays are an exemption.
Not now.
And I did have one other question. The leased parking spaces that are leased by businesses for guests. The only place I know of offhand is Morgan's, but they have 24 spots that are leased for
It says customers on their lot, and there's no way to identify
Right.
who that goes to, so they will be,
They just can't
we can't enforce those.
Okay, Karen, you have a question?
Yeah, a quick follow-on to this series of comments. The signage is going to be great outside, and I think it's great for folks that are aware, but we know many people can drive into the community and not even see the stoplight, let alone a sign like that. So I'm wondering if there could be a consistent look to something that could be given to everyone to have near to their front entrance on the inside. So whether it's actually posted at the counter or near the counter, and if nothing more, it reminds, to your point, it reminds the employee to comment on that to anybody who walks in the door, but it also gives another visual reminder opportunity to customers and clients. Is there anything like that for the insides?
We haven't addressed that, but it would be very easy to do. We have the centerfold map from the convention center. We could probably have that sent off to us, I'm assuming, Mary, as a PDF, and we can just email that out to all the businesses so that you have it.
For consistency, I think it would be great to come from this committee as opposed to anybody making up their own.
I think it's a great idea, and, I would like to see it also include the 3 colored lots, so that if you have somebody that wants to stay a while, you can identify and tell them where they should go to park.
And that map from the convention center
Yeah,
has
it'll
all
do
that.
that.
Yeah, that would be good.
I have a question. What about handicap spots? Are they going to be the same 2-hour thing? 2-hour enforcement?
The handicap parking we currently have is in those outer lots. There's a study going on now about the possibility of on-street handicap, which we're not sure that exists.
It's not on any of these streets that we're talking about?
No.
Correct. It doesn't fit, am I correct? It doesn't
Right.
fit.
You did a good job of explaining that it doesn't.
Think about when you need the width of your space, if you're handicapped, especially in a wheelchair, you're exiting on the driver's side, you're exiting into the street. Therefore, you don't have the space to safely get out of the car, potentially into a chair, or if you have difficulty walking, there's no area that's cordoned off. That's why you very rarely see a handicap space in a street with 2-way traffic.
I do think that'll be an area that we need to follow up on, though, because as those lots get more usage, we may determine they need more handicap
Because there are
spaces.
handicap spots, behind Middle Street there, and, that area back in there, so.
Behind Middle Street, you mean in the lots?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm concerned about the convention center when there's a big event and the guests that are coming for that. How are they going to know that they, because it could be an all-day event. And when there is a big event, my clients tell me the minute they walk in, they complain when they can't find parking. How are those people going to know about the parking situation? And they're going to have to rearrange their day around the parking. What could be done about that?
If you direct them to the outlying parking lots, this whole house of cards collapses if we don't embrace the outlying parking lots.
And the other thing that was not mentioned, but we do have another 114 spaces at Union Point Park, which is right next to the convention center, and those spaces will be all-day parking as well.
Can we consider a kind of transportation, like sort of the trolley kind of thing that's going on, for some of the older citizens that choose not to walk and choose to not come downtown because it's a quote problem? Is there any can we consider something that we can help them get from those lots to the stores that they want to go to? I don't know.
A long time ago, Danny Meadows was the Public Works Director for the city of New Bern, and when I first came in office, we asked questions such as that and other things. Why aren't we doing this for the city? And he sat me down, looked in my face, he said, Sabrina, money can make the bear dance. So I will tell you that with money, we could do anything. So it could be something where we could chip in together all the businesses and potentially do something like that. MSD, so MSD is the monies that property owners, not businesses, but property owners pay who own buildings in that district there. We pay a third tax above and beyond our city and county tax, and we're using those funds to pay for the enforcement officers, to pay for the equipment. We bought a little vehicle. We're trying to use those funds towards that. If that is an issue and a problem, we look at it. Chief, you might be able to answer this, but the little vehicle that Tryon Palace has, that little golf cart looking thing that they use to transport people back and forth, is that legal to have on our streets?
Yeah, it can be made street legal and be properly tagged, yes.
So maybe it's a possibility that we look at something like that potentially to drive around, but it would have some cost. I don't know if all businesses would pitch in. I don't know if MSD would pitch in, but we certainly, that's why Lynn wants to take all this feedback, and as we move forward, we want to hear this information and look at it and try to investigate.
I know that so many times, you'll hear out in the neighborhoods, I don't go downtown because, I can't park where I want to park and that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to think of a way, how can we overcome that objection, especially to people who don't like to walk or aren't necessarily handicapped but don't walk well. And can we help them to make it
That's
easier?
a great idea.
But I also think that during this process with employees moving off of the streets into different lots that are all-day parking lots, people will find that availability to park near where they want to shop is going to happen.
Should be much better.
It should be much better.
I really think that our businesses, and I'm one too, I mean, I lease the spaces I need to lease to make sure that my employees have a place to park, not impacting my customers. I think every business owner needs to take that responsibility. I really do.
A lot of them, the only thing I'll say, if you're an employer who leases spaces, make sure your employees are parking there.
Yes.
There's a lot of spaces that are leased that the employees don't park there.
No, they park there.
Right, but you have to, we try to encourage them. We can't always be policemen, but, I think hopefully with this enforcement system, if they get a ticket enough, they'll want to go back in their space that they don't have to pay, or, that's being paid for them rather than them coming out of their pocket.
I mean, the goal of enforcement isn't to write tickets.
No,
The
not
goal
at
of
all.
enforcement is to have turnover of parking spaces so that people can come downtown and more easily shop and more easily access everything that downtown has to offer, and to give them the options of, if you're coming for a shorter period of time, park on the street. If you're coming for a longer period of time, you park in the lots or on Broad Street. I mean, that's really what this is about. It's to make it easier for all of you to have people come and shop in your businesses.
I have a question about the leased parking spaces. If we currently lease them, we don't have to rebid or anything, they're still ours, right?
You lease from the city, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, right now, everything is,
Still
stays the same. Nothing has changed. The cost of them has not changed.
And how is that enforcement gonna be? Only if you have that little ticket in your
Tag,
window.
correct.
So no more towing? We can't have a vehicle towed out of our space?
Yeah, 'cause
Yes.
Sometimes I have them there like all day long.
When's the last time you saw a vehicle towed in downtown Newton?
Never.
Never.
But I've called, but they've never towed.
Right. And that's been the issue.
That's part of the equation we're trying to solve.
We're trying to stop that. We're
So
solving it.
so if they're ticketed though, so if they're ticketed, and that's gonna be like,
That won't
they
remove
drive
them.
by, they don't see a sticker, and they get ticketed.
They get
That may not remove them
$25.
from your space. They may sit there a while longer,
That's fine.
and that's going to put a hardship on the person that's supposed to be in that lease space. They're going to have to go somewhere for a time period. But we believe that once those spaces get known that they're going to be ticketed, then the problem will decrease dramatically.
For businesses, restaurants, others, if you are having a group, Chris, like the Chelsea or whatever, when you're with them, maybe we have a little one sheet that says, here's the parking information, during the day. Now, of course, your evening business, it will not
Here's
impact
what
that.
happened the other day. I had a 90-year-old lady that
I
drove
got you
herself.
3 more parking spaces on this road.
90-year-old lady that drove herself down. This was on Monday of last week. She parked just shy of the coffee shop. When she parked, she came in late. She was sitting with Robbie, and she was there for about 30 minutes. For about 10 minutes. 3 ladies walked in and said, the lady that's sitting in that booth over there just drove up on the hood of the other car that was behind her. So I walked her out there and I told her, I said, you hit these people that were also eating at the Chelsea. So they got it worked out. She was there for 2.5 hours. So she came back in at 8 and talked with Robbie and had her meeting. So when she comes back out to her car, she's going to have a $25 ticket on her car too. So that is what we're looking at. See, in my business, I don't just run in and get clothes and leave. People come in at Chelsea and it's a birthday party, older folks or whatever. They don't know what time they parked their car. That's what we're going to run into. And I'm down with it, but I'm going to tell you.
But can you think of a better solution?
Yeah, bring
Because we obviously can't have.
2 hours, I think, is going to be short. I got little ladies that come in, they come in.
Does anybody remember when we had 3 hours? What happened when we had 3 hours? We used to have 3-hour parking, and then we had employees parking for 3 hours, leaving for an hour to go to lunch, and then coming back for another 3 hours, and that didn't solve the problem. So they brought it back to the 2 hours, hoping to solve that problem. I mean, this is feedback again. In 30 days, come back and say, this is horrible, we need 3-hour parking, but we're trying to prevent the employees from parking on the street. That's the issue.
This is just the rollout now to the businesses. We all felt that it was vital for you all to have this information before this information goes public. But the city and will be very involved in getting this information rolled out to the public. Well, any suggestions that you have, in addition to whatever it is that we come up with in terms of trying to get people directed so that they know where to find the information that they need with regard to where they can park and for how long of a period of time. If you have any suggestions, please pass that forward to us. I mean, we can't think of everything, and there's a lot of very bright minds in this room, so give us suggestions so that we can incorporate as much of that into the public rollout as possible. But this is just the first step of the rollout, is to let you all be aware of what this is, so that you're not finding out about this when the public finds out. That's not fair to you all as business owners to get that information.
One more thing too, I
later.
don't think there's any attorneys here, but I know on court on Monday, it's all-day adventure, and those people are going to go into court, and they're going to have to go out, move their car in the middle of court.
But if they're not on Broad Street, they don't have to park. There's no time.
It's going to be.
So they'll have to find, they could go and park in that free lot and walk, at New Street. Well, again, they'll get a ticket.
That's their deal.
That is their deal.
And that's information that we need to get off the courts.
And they're grown
so that
people, they can read that it's 2 hour parking. Come on.
You hope some of them can.
I hope.
Yeah.
So do you guys not agree that, look, there's always like scenarios that are likely to happen, there's always scenarios that are possible to happen, right? But we can't plan for the possible. Your 90-year-old customer, that's a scenario, a true scenario, but it's not the norm, right? We can only make decisions that are going to meet the masses and set the standard for the norm. There's always going to be an exception where this regulation is not going to work for a very, very few number of customers, and it is going to get some customers upset. We're going to reevaluate this right after Labor Day, and when you guys get your questionnaire and you do reevaluate it, try to reevaluate it on not what's possible, but on what's likely. And it's more likely that your customers can come to your restaurant and eat within a 2-hour window and get in their car and leave. They can possibly eat within that 2-hour window, hit a couple of shops to shop, and still get out of that parking space within 2 hours. That's probably what's more likely. So please try to think, what's likely? What is our most likely customer? Does that make sense? And if it doesn't work, and we pass this questionnaire out, and every business is just really upset, then we're going to reevaluate. We might go to 3 hours, or we might start all over. We don't know, but we have to try something.
It's better than parking meters.
It's better than parking meters.
That's all I'm saying.
The old Marks building, is that all lease spaces back there?
It is. I think there's a few left, maybe. I'm just not
Just
sure.
curious.
They may all be leased at this point. I mean, check with Steve. They'll probably need some more.
Yeah, I do, because my clients are there for more than 2 hours.
Right.
Parking, it's not really even my issue, but I'm sitting next to a couple of guys at Pollock Street Pub. What about the city-owned spots by the traffic circle? I know that land is all kind of up in the air, but any of the parking across the street by the traffic circle?
Talking about by the park down there?
Yes.
Yeah, there's about 20 or 22 spaces there. That's all free public parking.
That is city free public parking?
It's on street it would be on street parking. So that's on street parking. Okay, well, everybody's here. It just kind of dawned on me for a minute that I want to mention this with very due respect to my good friends Winnie and Lindsay, but I would hesitate not to mention Greg's name and to say that he would be so pleased to see all of you here tonight. Every month we have these meetings and our numbers get fewer and fewer. And it's important that we stay engaged in what's happening downtown. The only way we can make a difference down here and solve some of these issues is by your input. Whether we agree or disagree, we're all sitting at the table bringing solutions rather than just complaining. And so I want to thank you, and I know if he was sitting here today, he would have a big smile on his face.
He would have been up here because he's been on the committee.
That's right. And he would have, and he would, say, all are welcome, all ideas are welcome. This is just another step forward in making our downtown a great place to be. So, let us see your faces, give input. Danny sends out flyers and notices. I hate that we had this issue and it brought everybody out. And I'm glad, this is good. But we want to see you on a regular basis more often so we can have your input, so we can share what's happening in downtown. I'm sure I can say many of you, and you'll say, hey, what's going on Craven Street? Why are all the people over there? Well, we put out a calendar every month that tells us what might be going on. There's a play at the theater going on. There's this going on, that going on. We just want to help you all be engaged, to know the information so your customers can have the information. And we all want to be successful. At the end of the day, it's our bottom line. And it's good. Tom, I love you dearly, and 20 years ago you told me you wouldn't be able to last in business because of this problem or that, but I'm still glad you're here, and that's why I love you. And you persevere like nobody else I know, and we all do, and I want to thank you.
Gosh, can't we do this in January?
Yeah. Right.
Out of them.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm really worried about? In a couple of weeks we got all the camp people coming in, and we got the notice. The city of New Bern's going to get the notice, and all the people who live in New Bern to get the notice. And these people come rolling in, ready for a wild, wild west New Bern, park where they want, do what they want, have a big time, and they're going to get hit with that.
They're not, because they're going to come in on Friday night, and there'll be no restriction.
Tom, we can send this information off to the camps. I mean, we're not trying to hide this information, we're trying to share it.
And keep in mind, it doesn't start till July.
No, it starts in June.
This doesn't start till July. And they get a free pass their first time. So they'll, at the very
somebody
worst,
goes over the first time, they will get a pass, so that lady would have gotten a pass.
She would have needed it.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about her driving a
Yeah,
car
really.
than I am being over 2 hours.
Everybody have a ticket right then. We refer them somewhere to pay it. Do they pay it? They go to the court?
No, it's all online.
All online. Okay, so they don't have
The
to worry about
information
that.
is right on the ticket. They can
And are they
handle it.
waterproof?
I don't know. Are they waterproof?
As best as it can be.
These paper is kind of a wax base, and you can try to rip it. It won't rip. Sun beats on it all day. It won't fade, and water can hit it, and it'll bead right off, and it's just as good. And don't go in an envelope or anything.
Only cops for that.
Don't go late. Don't get back.
On the selling each employee that they're moving them to an outer perimeter, 2 or 3 blocks, not in the summertime, but when it's dark at 7 o'clock in the morning and dark at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we've got a safe downtown. Do we still have the support of the police psychologically? I'm gonna walk in my car by myself, freezing my bum, and nobody's gonna bother me. And that's been a problem all the time, trying to tell someone, come into work, you can't get out behind the store.
I believe the police will still enforce it in town. And, is this true? Used to be. I don't know if you changed your method, but if somebody did not feel comfortable when they left their store in the evening, they could call 633-2020, and someone from the police department would come and escort them.
I have to say that because I come in really early, I do have to say that it is creepy in the morning a lot of times.
Can you, make a note of it, what's
Yeah,
creepy about it, and we can report it?
I have homeless people walking into my shop behind me.
Let us know that. We'll see you after this.
Yeah, maybe somebody could be there. We need to know this information. John?
I hesitate to bring this up. We've talked about
Everything.
we've talked about customers. We've talked about businesses. How about residents? I think we're the only 2 residents, my wife and I, on Middle Street, 217 Middle Street. We purchased that property in, I think, '94. Moved her business up here when you could have rolled a bowling ball down the street and not hit a car. We sold that business in 2000, but we still reside in the upstairs. We're the only people on Middle Street that do not have an assigned parking spot.
No.
So
My landlord, it's like you do.
Do they not still rent the spaces that the people prior to?
There might be 3 or 4 of us. There's very few of us that do not have an assigned parking spot that's reasonably distanced from our establishment. The thing that Paul brought up, I wouldn't expect Michael Lee to walk a block after dark to get to our home. We paid the MSD tax for 24 years now. Are
But
we
it
going to be
doesn't
penalized?
apply
Let me
to
finish.
four.
Let me finish. Are we going to be penalized for parking when we might forget to move the car? We rarely park on Middle Street anyway because we're conscious of the effort and the problems going on because we were an anchor business here for a number of years. So there needs to be some kind of exception. If there's a parking permit system, I mean, I don't mind paying it, but to have us park in an assigned parking spot a block away is just unreasonable.
Sean, I hear you, and I guess it's something we're just kind of have to work through because it is a different situation than what anybody has here. So I'm committing to try to see if we can resolve it.
That's a relatively easy solution. Make a tag like the lessees for residents. If you got the residence tag in your car, and and it has to say on it, instead of the business, it will say 217 Middle Street. And if he's parked at 217 Middle Street, and it's a residence tag, I mean, I've seen this is done, in many neighborhoods.
Sabrina,
wasn't
there an allowance for residences that came
There
out of parking?
There was, but it came down to when we
Did that not get
surveyed, when we surveyed it, John is the only one. Everybody else had leased parking, had a leased spot, not necessarily near, the one in Mary's building, they lease in.
It's not near, but they do have some.
Yeah, they do, it's not near, but they do. I'm willing to work with you, I don't know, and I had asked the attorney that this morning. He was unsure because the ordinance talks about free parking spaces on the street. In essence, you'd be leasing it in some sense to be guaranteed, I don't know, this is outside my pay grade right now.
It'd be a rolling leased spot. We're rarely on the street doing the business hours anyway
Right.
because we're so conscious.
Right, it's just the 8 Monday through Friday. I commit to working with that, so I'll try to see if we can find a solution that's workable. Yes, that would be workable. Billy will head that up and do it because again, you're the only person. We just don't want every resident then to come. I mean, what's for saying? Well, yeah, I have parking spaces in the back, but when my dad comes, he needs an elevator and he parks his car outside on the street all day. I don't think that's fair to the businesses, but he wants to go in and out our front door, not our back door. So, we have to figure out how we make that all work. These are things that are going to come up as the months go by, and we want that feedback so we can try to find resolution.
I'd like to have some kind of resolution before we start giving tickets.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. July 9th, so I got a few more days.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I came a little late. Are there more handouts?
Yeah.
Yes, there are.
There are. And then tomorrow I'll be sending out a PDF of this presentation to everybody. Early next week, this recording that Colleen is doing right now will be on YouTube, and we'll have a link for that in case you want to watch this again. And that will be emailed out to everybody. There are a number of businesses that weren't able to be here this evening, so they'll be relying solely on the PDFs that will be emailed out tomorrow and the link for this YouTube video next week. As you review over this information, and especially as we get started with this whole process, I know there's going to be things that come up. And just email me with anything that comes up, and we're going to try to address this stuff as quickly as possible. And like I said before, really, this is not about writing tickets. This is about turnover of parking in downtown for the benefit of everybody who has a business in downtown. Just bear that in mind. Be patient in this process. And don't hesitate to reach out when there is something that comes up so that we can deal with it sooner rather than later. It's much better to have it be brought forward and we deal with it rather than it be rumblings and mumblings, in the background between different businesses. Bring it forward, and we'll do our best to try to address things as quickly as possible.
And from a police standpoint, we always prefer compliance, and that's what we want. We obviously get no joy out of writing tickets to anyone, so compliance is the key. And I hope if by chance someone has to get a ticket or someone does get a ticket, that you don't take it on that poor parking attendant who's just doing their job. Because again, we want compliance.
Oh, and the other thing is, I will follow up with Mary about getting that PDF of the map that's going to be in the visitor's guide, and I'll get that sent off to everybody as well, as quickly as possible.
Where do we get our tags for the hang tags?
They're working on those now. The City of New Bern, the Finance Department is going to be doing those. So I
They
guess
mail
either
them to
they'll,
us, or-
probably, that's because they'll mail them to whoever's on the lease, and there'll be 2 per lease. So we just discussed that, MSD meeting the other day. So yeah, they're working on them this past Wednesday, so they're working on them. You'll have them before the time starts.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up here. And if